my dad would tell me something weird as I would grow up. He said, son, the war was absolutely horrible and all that, but somehow he said we were in a state of presence. We were in a state of allowing because we didn't have a choice. And I didn't get it. I'm only getting this in retrospect because when the external reality becomes so chaotic, so horrible that you have no choice than just to be present and thought kind of ceases, then what's underneath thought, which we refer to as the principle of mind, comes to the surface. So I experienced that. It's not like I experienced so much pain, and it doesn't mean that you don't feel what you feel, but then you also feel what's underneath that. Something almost gets activated if you're mindful and present enough, or maybe that's not the best wording, if your understanding of the mind allows you to stay connected with that.
Välkommen till podden Human Change med Daniel Magnusson. Fastnar du ofta i tankar kring oro, stress och irritation? Tror du att allt beror på att det är fel på dig? Då vill jag välkomna dig till podden som guidar dig till förståelse om hur vi människor fungerar egentligen. Genom denna förståelse kan vi leva ett liv fullt av kärlek och harmoni. Ditt ljus och hopp när allt verkar mörkt och hopplöst. Så låt nu Daniel guida dig till den stillhet vi alla letar efter. Där slutstationen är välmående och glädje. Lyssna och njut.
Du lyssnar på Human Change med mig, Daniel Magnusson, and I'm going to switch to English because the guest I'm speaking to today is Razmik Sargsyan, and actually we could talk in Swedish because Razmik has been studying in Sweden, but we decided to go for English. And very welcome, Razmik. You're a fellow podcaster, coach, right?
Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And we connected on LinkedIn like a couple of days ago because after listening into your podcast that I found a brand new thought that is also focusing on the three principles that like my podcast do. I was like listening into it, and I like looked you up on LinkedIn. I was like, Swedish, okay, what's this? And yeah, I'm gonna invite him. so I'm happy to have you here. So tell me, why did you go to Sweden first of all?
That's a good question. So I studied in Sweden. I went to grad school in Sweden, in Lund, and interestingly enough, that's where I discovered the three principles. Sweden is probably where a lot of my spiritual unfolding kind of took place, which is probably not the most common thing to hear, but I found that I had a lot more space in Sweden. I had this tendency to stay busy, to keep on doing things. I always had a very active and dynamic mind, and I loved problem solving and complex things since childhood. And in retrospect, I'm seeing that what I actually was craving was the stillness that it would give me. When I would get engaged in an activity like that, I would just stay still. So I was always curious, what's next? What's my role? What else can I get? And somehow this journey took me to Sweden, and I'm just so happy it did, because so many interesting synchronicities happened, including my discovery of the three principles, which is the framework that we both share, a framework that is being used all over the world to drive positive change in so many fields. So yeah, I'm very thankful for that, and I have very high regard for Sweden and Swedish language and culture. Tyvärr är jag inte så flyttande, men jag älskar svenska och allt som har med Sverige att göra.
Great, great. And so you don't understand Swedish. He said, "I don't speak so fluent, but actually do," and he loves Swedish and Sweden, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, how did you come in contact with the three principles in Sweden, of all places? Right?
Yeah, well, it was actually meeting a friend in an airport in Athens, who's a coach based in Cyprus. But then she introduced me to the three principles, and it was initially through the teachings of Aaron Turner and Michael Neal that I got to find out about the three principles. And when people get introduced to the three principles, I feel like there are a couple of reactions that are common. Sometimes it's like, oh yeah. Sometimes it's, well, yeah, it's kind of obvious. But every once in a while, you get this, oh my God, kind of reactions. And I had one of those in Lund. I was jogging and I was listening to Aaron Turner speak. And at that point, I had already explored a lot of other things, psychology, spirituality. I was really into meditative techniques and breath work. So I had experiences of no thought or going beyond thought and feeling how my inner being was expanding through me and a lot of that, but I didn't have a framework for that. And when I got introduced to it, for whatever reason, I just had that openness to perceive it in the beginning. Sometimes people call it beginner's luck, right? There's actually science behind it. When you're just starting with something, you haven't conceptualized it. You're not necessarily relating to it through all your previous concepts. So, and I was jogging, so I wasn't too concentrated. I was just relaxed, and it dawned on me that so many, if not all of the problems I thought I had were creating by thought. And it wasn't like they disappeared. It wasn't like there were no problems anymore, but my relationship with that just changed in a second. And then since then, it has been going back and forth, uh, understanding more of that. The three principles are a framework that can be easily misunderstood too. I'm sure people that you have interviewed and yourself have shared that this is not a technique, not a concept, it's an understanding. But you can relate to it as a technique, you can relate to it as a concept. You will have the idea of that, but true change comes on a very subtle, nuclear almost level. And I have had the luck to benefit from it and share it with people.
And when did this happen?
I think it was 2016.
Okay. And how long did you stay in Sweden? And what
Yeah, I
happened then?
stayed in Sweden for 4 years, and later I actually ended up working for the Swedish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So I've always been interested in change and transformation. So I've just pursued different modalities of that. So development work and projects was one of those. And then with the three principles in coaching, it unfolded and took new domains.
Yeah. And now you live in Armenia.
Yeah, I just returned from Arizona. I've been changing a lot of places to live and fields to work. But right now I'm in my hometown. I am in Armenia, and I share the principles through a podcast called Brand New Thought, as you mentioned. And it's just such a joyful thing to do. Sydney Banks, who's the person who introduced the three principles, or the idea of the three principles initially, he didn't refer to it as the three principles. He used to say that there are two beautiful moments. Like, one is when you get an insight deep within as a feeling, and then the other is when you share it as best you can, and then you just witness people wake up to it. And for me to change even one person, two people, and witness that, it's just nothing beats the satisfaction of that.
Yeah.
So I'm doing it for very selfish reasons.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really so, I mean, like a privilege to be in these moments when that is happening, and you can see the change and the transformation in people when the shift happens. And you've been living in Armenia. How long have you been here in or here, but there in Armenia now?
Well, I was born and raised here, and I went to law school here, and then I moved to Sweden, and I stayed there for 4 years, and then I returned to Armenia, and then I went to United States to work and study again, and I just returned again 2 months ago.
2 months ago, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you said that you got tested a little bit about the resilience and
Oh yeah.
resilience. Yeah. So like just because resilience sometimes when I talk to English speaking people, I say resilience, and they're like, what's that? And also the same with Swedish people, of course, that and other people from different languages. But how would you explain resilience if we like try to create a common view of resilience, what
That's
that
a
is?
that's a great question. To me, resilience is the capacity to bounce back. Probably a more clinical or psychological definition of resilience is flexibility of behaviors and emotions. This, if I describe it from the perspective of the three principles, or my perspective, I think resilience is a side effect of our relationship with what we feel and what we think. It's all interconnected. And as I said, I feel like it all comes from our basic nuclear understanding of things. And let me give you an example that might make more sense. I heard about a study, if I'm not mistaken, by Dr. Aaron Turner, that they did with children. So they have a group of children that are playing, and in the same room there is a clown moving its head left and right, and every once in a while children receive a candy bar. So the researchers just leave them, they are playing, and then come back after some time and observe something really bizarre. All or majority of children are doing something random but consistent. So somebody's jumping up and down, somebody's running back and forth, somebody's saying a specific word. And the way they made sense of it was that every child was doing the thing that they were doing when they got the candy bar. So in their mind, that was the thing that caused the candy bar to come out. And and here's why I'm sharing this. Well, that was not even true. So it was random. Them getting the candy bar was random. So it wasn't true, but because that's what they believed, because that was their paradigm, that was the thing that continued guiding their behavior. And a lot of people might say, oh, well, yeah, it's just children, but it's true about everyone on a deep level. So it's the same about resilience too, given our understanding about where resilience comes from, whether resilience is something that has to be learned, discovered, or maybe relaxed into, given our understanding of what our feelings are trying to communicate with us. What's the role of thought? How much can we focus on one thought or the other? So in my mind, resilience is a side effect of all that in its entirety. And the three principles as well, it works when appreciated holistically. And in a way, there is no such thing as three separate principles. Sydney Banks, when you listen to the early recordings of Sid Banks, he doesn't use the term three principles. And when he started using it, he would make sure to highlight And by the way, they're all one thing. It's all one thing. It's all one intelligence. So I feel like resilience is one of these things where I've noticed when people appreciate the entirety of what the three principles point to, they get their innate resilience starts unfolding.
Yeah, and I think that's the key word also in this case. It's innate. It's something that's a part of you since birth. The resilience, the capacity to bounce back and knowing that you will be okay even if it's tough right now. And I think it's very common in society that we think that we need to build the resilience because we experience the lack of resilience in tough situations, and then we think that we lost it or that we need to build it because it's been taken away and so on. But how can something that is innate, something that is with us from birth, be taken away? And it's still formless. It's a feeling. It's a sense of being, and that can never be taken away. But we believe that, and then because we cannot feel it, and then we will do different kind of things to get it back. And then we're usually quite lost in these activities. And I like the way you said, like with the experiment with the children there, that but that's just children. And you say, but if you can see that in other other parts of life when you're also grown up, because we do draw a connection to how we felt in a certain situation, and then we look, what did I do? Then I will do the same thing, and then I'm hopefully gonna feel the same thing I felt.
I love what you just said about the innateness of resilience, and I think this is true about other topics too. It's very important to appreciate what's innate and what's something that we kind of already have, but perhaps some misunderstandings that we have are preventing those things from unfolding through us, versus things that are skills. Because, so for example, communicating is a skill. Like the more you communicate, the more you become better. But if you think about it as something innate and you buy into this belief that, well, I'm an introvert, I can't do this and all that, well, you're not going to be open to learning. And by the same token, there are things like resilience, major aspects of them are already there. And it's just our misunderstandings about how our psychology works that are maybe preventing that from working more efficiently. So there are a lot of misunderstandings about resilience. One of them is that resilience is constancy of experience or having only positive experiences. So, but that's not true. Resilience is not the absence of negative experience. Even spiritual wisdom, psychological maturity isn't even that. It's about awareness of experience. It's about allowing it. If we talk about enlightened people, what is enlightenment? But anyways, let's mention mystics like Sydney Banks, Eckhart Tolle. It's not like they don't have any negative experiences. It's not like they don't feel stress. It's just they don't mind when it comes up.
Yeah.
So resilience is much more than control of your experience. And here's the thing, feelings always fluctuate. That's something that we don't always appreciate. We don't have a choice about that. We can just enjoy all of them and use the feedback of our feeling. Sydney Banks used to say, we're all schizophrenics in slow motion. If you divide your day into minutes and seconds, you're going to notice that. But sometimes when a very negative experience happens and we think a thought and the feeling that comes with it screams almost our human tendency, and again, it's so innocent, it's so human, is to go with that and spend more time with that and try to analyze that, so that it goes away.
Mm.
But innocently, sometimes that's the thing that keeps it awake, keeps it alive, gives it a momentum. A story that I heard once that was brilliant about this, I think I got it from George Pransky. It's the story of a man with a long beard. You know, this really long beards. I think they have like museums of those. So, and he's happily living his life. People are enjoying his beard. He's enjoying his beard. And one day somebody asks him, when you're sleeping, are you keeping your beard under the blanket or on the blanket? And he says, I don't know, I haven't really thought about it. But and then he does. He's that same night he goes to sleep and he notices that the beard is on the blanket. So he just tells himself, oh, this is apparently how I sleep. And then, after a minute, he notices that his chin is kind of uncomfortable. So he puts it back under the blanket, and then it gets itchy and uncomfortable and too warm. Then he puts it on the blanket and under the blanket. You get it. And the poor man just can't sleep for a long period of time. And this is a story. This is just a metaphor, right? But if you think about it, something that was not a problem before he even considered thinking about it to solve it becomes a problem when he does.
Mm.
It's just so innocent because we do feel a personal responsibility for our well-being. So when these negative feelings come up, if we don't understand where they point to, we're going to be inclined to engage with them more. Whereas the role of feelings is actually to do the opposite. The more quiet the feeling is, the more we can rely on the information that the thought we're having in the moment is giving us. It's all in moment, in second, and it's very important to appreciate that.
Mm. Yeah, and it's so beautifully put that how we can get lost from it just because we start to pay so much attention to the thoughts that we have in the moment of whatever we're thinking of, and getting stuck in it. And I think I can relate a lot about that. Like when I getting stressed or worried or something, before I was like really caught up in it. Now it's more like, I'm stressed. Okay. And more okay with it. Of course, I'm not going to enjoy all the feelings I have sometimes, but I'm okay with it. And usually it passes away before I had to, like, I don't know, do some activities and try to avoid it and using techniques and stuff like that. But now it's like, yeah, okay. And that's a relief of a lot of things. Saving time also, definitely.
Absolutely, that's very profound what you said, and there's so much noise out there about the need to change your thoughts and your feelings. But here's the thing: once they have already taken form, they have already taken form. If you're trying to change it, you're trying to solve the problem after the fact, and it's all innocent. You would be mad not to want to do it, but then you will stop doing it once you appreciate that thoughts don't have a momentum of their own. Sometimes one of my clients once told me, well, I understand this thing about thought. I'm kind of feeling the resonance of my thoughts and everything, and that's where my feelings are coming from, but I don't really get why it's good news. Previously I thought it was the circumstances, so I had a way to navigate them. I would just go away from those that I believed caused me to feel this way to those that would make me feel good. And here's the thing. So she got one part of it, but then another absolutely crucial part of it is that, yes, we feel the resonance of our thoughts, but thoughts don't have a momentum of their own. If I give you my phone number, in order to remember it, you have to keep on repeating it. The minute your attention goes somewhere else, it's gone. But if we don't know that, we keep on engaging with that, just like the man with the long beard, innocently thinking that if we don't do that, it's not going to go away. And that's why perception of the three principles has to, in order to be of meaningful results, it has to take place on a deeper level. It comes with a feeling, simply appreciating that no, thoughts really don't have a momentum of their own. And I would hate for somebody just to believe in what I'm saying, what you're saying. These are working hypotheses. And one of the reasons I'm so confident in sharing this is that I know it's true. No matter how bad of a job I do at describing it, I'm only pointing to a direction, and people can look at it and see it for themselves, because that's the only thing that's going to matter. And this reminded me of a beautiful thing that I actually read in Sweden. It was a book called Hjärtats innersta slag, if I'm pronouncing it right, the inner beat of the heart. And there was this beautiful saying over there: inte allt som kan förklaras är sant, och inte allt som är sant kan förklaras. In English, correct me if I'm getting this wrong. Not everything that is true can be explained, and not everything that can be explained is true. So these are all just pointers. You look inside, you see if these are true for yourself, one heart at a time. This is where the divine selfishness comes from. I said, I'm actually doing this for selfish reasons. I feel like there's a level where hedonism and altruism, this idea that you're supposed to do good to other people or to yourself, they're actually the same. If you tap into that place in you that already knows all of this, that is already aligned, that is already and that will be who you're being. And then all the actions and everything that comes from that state will ultimately be the thing that will serve other people. But it all has to come from the inside out.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we got to that, but
but it's beautiful. And I think that's why it's so, I don't want to use the word important, but why it's so crucial. I don't know if that's better than important, but that we need to have the insight for ourselves and not like buying it into as a belief. That's something you read in a magazine that step 2, 1, 2, 3, 4 is going to help you get resilience. Oh, okay. And then you buy into it and you start to believe that is true compared to see something as true. Totally different. And regarding resilience, you had some tests on it yourself, some challenges regarding that back into 2020?
Yeah. So in 2020, I was actually working with the Swedish embassy. I was their political affairs officer, and a new war broke out in my region. And war was kind of all around me, even before I was born. My dad was a doctor in the first war, which took place in 1988 to 1994, and we would play. One of our favorite places to play as children was like a half demolished building. We weren't getting all of this, and so it was relative peace as I grew up, but there were so many signs of the war, and somehow we thought it was all over. And then in 2020 it started again, and because of my work, I needed to process all that information. It was all videotaped, and you could watch all these horrible atrocities and read about it. And that, for me, that was the ultimate test to the truth of the three principles that I was sharing even then. Of course, I kind of, in a way, shied away from sharing too much of that, because in my mind, I was respecting the individual pain of everybody. And there's wisdom in that too. But so for me, the reason this was a test is, well, Terence McKenna has a beautiful way of speaking about this. The difference between truth and bullshit is that you need to believe in bullshit for that to work. Truth doesn't care. Yeah. Yeah.
Truth doesn't care.
Truth doesn't care if you believe in it. So
Yeah.
if what we're pointing to is true.
Sorry. That was so good. That is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check out Terence McKenna. Is wonderful.
Yeah. Sorry.
Don't be. I love it. The laughter. I mean, you couldn't give me a better compliment than that. So if this is true, it has to be true always. So if this is true in a work-related situation, when there is, a difficult boss or in a relationship context, it has to be true always. And it allowed me to see that. Even before that, I was getting hints at that. My dad would tell me something weird as I would grow up. He said, son, the war was absolutely horrible and all that. But somehow, he said, we were in a state of presence. We were in a state of allowing, because we didn't have a choice. And I didn't get it. I'm only getting this in retrospect, because when the external reality becomes so chaotic, so horrible, that you have no choice than just to be present, and thought kind of ceases, then what's underneath thought, which we refer to as the principle of mind, comes to the surface. So I experienced that. It's not like I experienced so much pain, and it doesn't mean that you don't feel what you feel, but then you also feel what's underneath that. Something almost gets activated if you're mindful and present enough, or maybe that's not the best wording, if your understanding of the mind allows you to stay connected with that. So it was a very moving experience. So in a way, this experience of seeing how much of what I thought I knew about the three principles withstands the test of the war was something that gave me confidence to share, because I had this tendency to make sure I got it all right before I share, before I engage in something. And this is, for example, when I started dancing, I would only go to the training sessions and would shy away from the socials, because in my mind I needed to get it right. But there's no way not doing something that will ultimately be the thing to make you do it better. It's going to make you better at it. So I suppose the insights that I had and how I shared and the feedback I got was my way of transmuting that experience into something good.
Yeah. So the challenge is in this then, when you started going through the news and the videos and all that in that position you had, what made you in that case challenging the resilience and the truth of it?
Mm-hmm. So, well, because here's the thing. I say thoughts don't have a momentum, so they're going to come and go. But by the same token, we also have the free will to concentrate on any of those for as long as we do. So they're going to stick around in our awareness, and we're going to feel them for as long as we do. When something like that happens and you have endless content to process, and you're taking it very personally, you're looking for solutions, it can be hard to pause that. It almost feels like that thing takes over. So, and then noticing at some point, well, where I keep on processing this, but I keep on feeling bad and I don't necessarily articulate it in a better form. Maybe I need to take a break from this. Well, that's what comes. That would be the side effect of your understanding of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
So it was through these kind of examples I would relearn what I had learned. And a deeper part of it is, I suppose, feeling what you feel, and maybe at some point letting go of the story, because we feel like we have to keep the story, to analyze it, to solve it so that the feeling goes away. But that sometimes is the thing that allows us to, without noticing, just keep on thinking it. So being able to snap out of it, listening to the guidance or feelings, it's just, here's the thing, we spoke about screaming feelings, right? It's so innocent to for your attention to go where then there's more noise, because that's how kind of this external world works. And I'm showing this with my hand. If we kind of conceptualize this is like 100 thoughts a second, some sort of like a speedometer of thoughts, and this is 0 thoughts per second, right?
Yeah,
And we're
hand is up high. Then
upper
it's
hand
like,
is 100 thoughts a second. Lower hand is 0 thoughts a second. I think this metaphor, it was originally George Pransky that came up with this. Well, when there's 0 thoughts per second, there is forgiveness, there's presence, there is allowing brand new things to come through you. It's, you're connected with the being, and then the being will almost dictate what the best course of action is. And this is where we feel quiet over here. We misunderstand that if we feel quiet, if we feel still, we're not going to do anything. That's misnomer. That's nonsense. It's just when we have a lot of noise, it feels like we're doing a lot of things, because that's how the brain works. We spend energy, but we're not. So as the speed of thoughts kind of increases, we start feeling a little bit more stress. This noise starts increasing too. And it's going to keep on doing it, actually. We had a conversation with Dominic Scafidi on my podcast, and he mentioned the law of attraction. Was a quote something like, if this keeps on happening and you don't get it, don't worry about it. It's going to keep getting worse. And that's part of well-being too, because it's there to wake you up at some point. So one helpful insight for me throughout all that experience was that, oh, actually this noise thing, even when it gets worse, even when I feel worse, there is benevolence to that. And if somehow I wake up to something that I had seen, which was that feelings are giving me feedback about thought, then it's so helpful. I mean, it would be if I actually have 100 thoughts per second. So my judgment is completely bad. I can't communicate well. I can't do anything. But if I didn't have that pointer, how else would I know whether to trust my thoughts or not? Because you can't sort it out through the content of your thinking. It's whatever the thinker thinks in the moment, the prover proves. Like so in Sweden, for example, I would if my thoughts about Sweden would go up and down. I would take the tube every day, and if at a certain day I had the thought like, oh, this kind of sucks, well, I would only highlight the information that that would prove that thought.
Yeah.
It's innocent, and if not for the feeling, there would be no way to navigate. And I think part of the test was actually seeing like, yeah, this is it's not just accidentally put in me, like this capacity to feel my thoughts. It's not accidental. It's there's beauty in the system, even and perhaps especially when you're going through a traumatic experience and you're sad and you're stressed and you're feeling powerless.
It's a perfection in the system. We only think it isn't, but that's just a misunderstanding of and then like knowing how our system is actually functioning. And if we come from that perspective, then we will see that it's broken or damaged. So yeah, and as you say that you're pointing to the feeling, how important it is to listen to it, because then you can really see it, because the feeling in itself is guiding us. And that I last couple of days, it's like, yeah, the more I listen to my feeling and seeing the feeling as an indication if I'm on the right track or off track, like all these heavy feeling, negative feelings are really good signposts telling me I'm in the wrong direction. The end station is not where I want to go. But we believe so strongly that there's something wrong, or I need to act on these feelings. And once again, if I believe that the feelings I feel is coming from the circumstances, I will do my best to get away from the circumstances or try to control or handle the circumstances. And then, as Dominic said, like, yeah, don't worry, it will get worse.
Yeah.
And that's why it's also perfection in it, because the body and mind is sending signals to us all the time for us to wake up from it. But if we think, yeah, that's not a signal telling me to wake up, it's actually a signal telling me that I need to do something about it. And like, that's like turning off the fire alarm when there's a fire, because you are irritated on the sound.
Yeah. It's so innocent to misunderstand this. That's why I think when I had my first kind of set of insights about all of this, I was laughing. I was laughing nonstop. Like in Lund, I even remember where it was, and people were like, "What's going on with this guy?" But I was laughing at myself with joy, with forgiveness to myself, that all these things I was holding against myself, oh my God, they were just thought. And I know this may sound so simplistic. It may sound like gaslighting or anything like that. That's not the intention here.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing: we say follow the guidance of feelings, and that's applicable both in moment, but also as you are processing this. So somebody might decide to listen to this conversation, listen to this through the feeling. There are so many pointers to that. Joseph Campbell used to say, follow your bliss. Sydney Banks points to it. Even Christianity, religion, the idea of the kingdom of heaven is within. It's the same thing. They're all metaphors. And it took. I'm still learning this. Like, I think everybody is. We're all on a learning curve. Getting this doesn't mean you're never going to caught up in a bad feeling. You're still going to have all of those, but you're likely to mind it less. You're likely to, if there's any helpful information in that, use it more. There are people that, I don't know what this disease is called, but if you can't sense, you mentioned fire, you can't sense heat, you basically are going to get burnt all the time. You can't sense it. So it's so feeling to me is that ultimate feedback mechanism, and that compensates for the fact that we may not have full control. So this is a common misunderstanding. Once we kind of sense that thoughts have something to do with how we experience world, we may be inclined to control thought as much as possible, but we can't decide what thought shows up and therefore what we're going to experience. But it's up to us whether to build an additional layer on it, whether to allow it to just go away, whether to transcend it or do whatever. And that's enough. It's much more gentle. It's very trendy and kind of like a sexy thing to say nowadays: control your thoughts and then you're going to manifest everything and all that. In my experience, it's just not true. Even if you could control your thoughts to that degree, why would you do it? If you understand that thought is transient, why would you even want to do it? And it's not even possible to do it long term. So for me and for the people that I work with, I feel like going back to this understanding in a gentle way with the feeling is the thing that serves you most.
Yeah, I mean, we cannot control the thoughts. They just pop up. And the only thing, if I'm thinking I'm going to keep focus and believing that I'm controlling the thought, but that thought is just passed away anyway. It's like it's already gone. So it's a new thought, maybe similar to the one I had
Yeah.
before. And when we see the innocent that we don't decide what's going to pop up in our mind, then like, why should I blame myself? Because it's not me who decides what I'm going to think. So, yeah. So thank you very much for this conversation today, Razmik. What if someone would like to come in contact with you? Of course, I'm going to put it in the show notes also, and also the podcast. I can highly recommend it. What's the best way to come in contact with you?
Thank you so much, Daniel, for the invitation. I've enjoyed talking with you. This is a co-creation. The things that came through me were inspired by your questions, and I ran a podcast too. So I really appreciate it. I'm very easy to find, brandnewthought.com, and then from there, people can follow my social media pages. There's a lot of free content, so the podcast, videos, blogs. There are many different ways to work with me. Everybody is welcome to book an initial call, and we just speak. There are different programs, workshops. Tomorrow, we're doing a free workshop on resilience, where we go into more detail about this. But I suppose when this comes up, it won't be tomorrow anymore. However, you can always listen to the recording. Brandnewthought.com. And I love hearing from people, and not just when this resonates with people, which is important for me to hear, but also if somebody has a difficulty getting this or has a different opinion, I'd love to hear from people.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. And if you're going to say some last things to the listeners, what do you want to say to them?
Yeah, it's funny. I ask this to my guests sometimes. I didn't know it was going to backfire. I would say follow the feeling and let go of the story. Follow the feeling and let go of the story. It's simple. It's the simpler, the better. You already know this or some of this, and it is going to serve you so much more if you keep on listening to that which you know to be true, even if you may use a completely different language for this. So go with that instead of a sexy concept you might hear in a podcast. And again, that comes back to following the feeling.
Tack för att du har lyssnat på det här avsnittet. Är det så att du uppskattar den här podcasten, så får du självklart dela den vidare till dem du tänker kan ha ett behov av att lyssna på den. Det finns också en möjlighet för dig att boka in sig på ett kostnadsfritt coachingsamtal med mig. Det finns inga förbehåll att du måste ha tankar om att bli coachad, utan du kanske har en frågeställning, bara så här: det här skulle vara intressant att bolla med Daniel. Så kan jag hjälpa dig på något sätt, så gör jag det mer än gärna. Skicka frågan till mig på daniel@humanchange.se. På hemsidan hittar du även videokursen Nyckeln till stressfrihet. Det är en videokurs som jag tillsammans med Angelica Almqvist har skapat. Och det är ett program då för dig som vill ha ett stressfriare liv. Och några vanliga effekter som man kan se efter den här är då minskad stress, oro, frustration och psykisk ohälsa. Ett ökat lugn, välbefinnande, sinnesro med mera. Tack!